Suhit Amin, welcome to the podcast, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
That's a pleasure. We're in the Green Room studio in Glasgow. For people that are watching along and not listening along, hello. Let's get started. Who is Suhit today in 2022?
Wow, big question. Quick introduction. So I'm Suhit Amin. I'm a 21-year-old young entrepreneur born and raised in Glasgow. And I primarily do influencer marketing. So manage influencers, run an educational group. I got a bit into property and really just trying to live life as a young entrepreneur. Really, that's the main goal. Is just I've been in entrepreneurship for 8 years, and I'm just trying to enjoy that grind, you know.
And 8 years is a long period of time, but you're still really young. How old are you?
21.
21. I'm 24, and I feel like I'm such a young buck. But you're 21. Like my little sister's 21, and she's like a kind of a university student. She's not sure what she wants to do just now, and you've had it all figured out, quote unquote, for almost 8 years. Let's go back to 13-year-old Suhit.
Yep.
Where did it all begin?
Yeah, so this is when I was kind of just figuring out exactly what I wanted to do. So when I was 13, I really always wanted to be a doctor. So this is completely different to what I'm doing now. Like if I always wanted to be a doctor, I would still probably be in university right now and wouldn't probably graduate and actually become a doctor. I think you're in your 30s. So I'd always want to be a doctor up until the age of 13. My parents are both doctors. And it's when I was 13 that I had a sort of switch, because I was always really into gaming. So I was young. I wasn't nerdy about it though. There's some people who are nerds that sit there. I still did other stuff, but I was
what they all say.
I actually spoke to someone and they said the exact thing to me, and I said, that's what they say. That's what I always say. But no, I was really into gaming, and I kind of discovered sort of how you could monetize games and basically by creating content on YouTube. And when I was 13, I was like, this was crazy to me, because it's I can do what I love, video it, put it on YouTube and make money. Obviously I was not making very much money, but it was the whole concept of that, which was do I need to go down this traditional route that my parents went to? Do I actually want to be a doctor? Because I think I almost wanted to be a doctor just because they were and I was always kind of interested in it, but it really switched in my head. I was like, do I actually even want to be a doctor, or do I want to do something I'm passionate about? So I started making content on YouTube, really, really low quality, awful gaming content around, FIFA, Minecraft, whatever it was that I was interested in at the time with some friends at school. And I did that for a wee while. And then I, inevitably realized as a 13-year-old with very little quality, not really much strategy behind it, and a high squeaky voice was another one, that it wasn't going to go anywhere. So all my friends quit. I continued, and just, I continued because I just loved it. I was like, it's not going to go anywhere, but I'm just going to continue doing it. But that's when I sort of discovered the business side of YouTube. And I was like, okay, if I'm not going to be able to make it myself as a content creator, I could get involved in a business that helped other content creators grow. So that's what I did when I was 13, 14. That's how kind of the journey started, and it all just came through. And that's one of the things, I don't game anymore, but I'm so thankful for the fact that I was a gamer kid, because I wouldn't have been online making content, meeting these people online who kind of exposed me to the fact that you could monetize content.
Given that your parents have such illustrious, hallmark, traditional careers, what was their perception of you spending so much time behind a screen at that age? Were they supportive or averse to it?
So at the time, very averse to it. My parents are, my dad's from Kenya, my mum's from India, and they're both come from very sort of traditional sort of Indian families of go to school, get good grades, get a good job. So it was always very much ingrained in me from when I was younger. They didn't really like me sort of deviating from that at the beginning. Obviously I had my time where I could game, do enjoyment or whatever, but they didn't know half the time. I would do a lot of the stuff in secret. If I heard them coming up the stairs, quickly switch tab to something else. Secretly when they go to sleep, wake, get out of my bed and game or whatever. So they were not 100% aware of it, but I think they kind of knew that I was skirting the boundaries a bit, but they weren't massively supportive of it at the time. And especially I don't think for the first 3 years of my online, business discovery stages from when I was 13 to 16, they weren't supportive of it because they just wanted the best for me. That's what parents want. They thought the best for me was you know, I was an academic kid, go to school, continue getting good grades, and then get a good job after university. So there wasn't that support until I was, I'd say, around 16. That's when they started like this, you know, something happened, and then they became much more supportive of what I was doing from that from that age. And now they're, you know, the most supportive people in, you know, what I do, give me creative criticism, but also, you know, support, you know, my decisions and what I'm trying to achieve.
And I guess when they were 13 years old, the career options that they had were only visible to only visible based on the careers that were surrounded around them. So what their aunties were doing, or their parents were doing, or friends and family were doing. But at 13, given the digitalization that we live in, you could look online at other careers, esports, influencers at that time. I don't know if influencers were such a big thing there, but essentially what I'm trying to say is that the internet democratized role models at that time. Whereas if that was 40 years ago, you would have not been exposed to esports or e-gaming or that industry. That being said, at the age of 13, what role models did you have that kind of helped you accelerate that journey at 13? The kind of like the kind of online role models that you were consuming, sorry.
Yeah, I mean that was that's really interesting you say that part first, because I completely agree. It's like you're only really aware of what you're exposed to, and obviously they had no idea that anything was possible because they just didn't grow up like that. They didn't know it was a thing, and that's what like previous generations aren't really aware of. That's why it's such like a Gen Z millennial movement towards sort of more internet related jobs, remote, whatever. But sort of to your question of like sort of role models in that space, like I consumed a lot of YouTube content at that time, and it was primarily sort of UK YouTubers. And I think the name that everyone knows of, like the Sidemen, like I like looked up to them a lot. I watched a lot of their content. For me, mostly it was Vicstar, just because it's like, I'm Indian, he's Indian. It's like the Indian dude that kind of made it big online. And, you know, arguably like one of the biggest in the UK now. So that was the sort of online role models I had, as well as just like older people that I'd met online in the space who I was like, they've been able to sort of achieve something in this online space. Like, how can I do what they did? So there's a lot of just like online friends I made, plus consuming content, specifically the Sidemen at the time.
I think what is remarkable about YouTubers, especially those who do vlogs, is that you get a really transparent insight into the realities of certain careers. And what I mean by that is that 20 years ago, you would only understand the kind of high level procedures of what a doctor did based on what you knew through family and friends and what was taught to you in school. But with vlogs, you could see the days that YouTubers were having bad days and they couldn't get out of bed. You could see the transparent challenges that they were facing, not just the gold standard rewards that you would associate with a doctor, which would be salary or something like that.
Yeah, and that's why like the influencer movement has just blown up, because it's the whole like relatability aspect of it, even comparable to like celebrities, right? Celebrities are they're sort of PR engines. Like, you know, they have their teams and everything looks pretty crystal and that you can't really see behind that. Whereas influencers are real, they're raw. You know, they were just normal people really until they blew up, especially with the day and age right now. All these TikTokers who blew up very, very quickly, they were just people dancing in the bedroom yesterday, and now they've got 2 million. Like it's a very real, and like it almost is the aspect of like you know the relatability of like anyone could do that. So you get to see like really behind the scenes of that. I think a lot more with influencers.
I think COVID accelerated that as well. I think there was a hiatus maybe around 2018, where influencers were very polished, drove fast cars, had six pack abs, and were the kind of traditional archetype of an influencer. And then because of COVID in 2020, everyone's material resources were kind of somewhat taken away from them. So those influencers could no longer be in Dubai posing with the fast car in a hotel. They were forced back to just showcasing their day in the life or doing silly dances in the room. And then I think that opened the market for other people to be able to do that or feel empowered to do that. And I feel like that somewhat has democratized influencer marketing to some level. People are more raw and authentic and transparent online, and to some degree more imperfect now. But I think if I were to look from the outside in 2017, 18, 19, like the first cusp of Gymshark models, for example, like they were very pristine and polished, but I don't think it's quite the same anymore.
Yeah, I definitely think internet culture has adapted. COVID is a very good example because like everyone was going through the same experiences of COVID. Like it doesn't matter if you were, you know, an influencer with 10 million subscribers, you're under the same rules, under the same jurisdiction. So like it does become more relatable. But I also think definitely because of everyone being in consuming more content over the COVID period, internet culture accelerated and evolved and adopted. So now people do like more imperfect, and even you're seeing with brands are being more, you know, me and imperfect and not being that whole polished, you know, PR that they would anymore. Gymshark is a good example of one. Gymshark are doing a lot of, you know, crazy things. Like I remember seeing on Twitter, they did like a tweet of whichever tweet gets the highest likes, and we're going to put it on a billboard in New York. And it was just some YouTuber said, stream my song. Completely unrelated to Gymshark. It's just a meme, but like it's, you know, it's just all of these things. And definitely I'd say that a lot of that happened during COVID because people had to start being, you know, more creative with what they were doing from a brand aspect, but also like influencers were posed with the same problems as everyday people. So that came out a lot more.
To take it back to your story, do you remember the first time you got paid for your work in this space?
I remember the first time I got like paid from like a salary, which was when I was 16 at a company called ESL. I was earning 800 euros with them a month. And at like 16-year-olds, oh, that was really cool. I think the first time like I got paid probably from YouTube, like I don't remember exactly what the figure was, but it'll be in like the $1 to $5 range or something. And then I did a few like different hustles to make some money. So I remember I got like I made $2,000 by selling a YouTube channel. That was like the first big payment I ever got. So I think that was when I was 15. And like that's obviously life-changing money to 15-year-old. I was like, wow, I'm rich, I'm done.
How many subscribers did that channel have?
37,000 subscribers.
So what value did that bring? Why did someone want to pay 2,000 for that? Why is that? Why is having an audience of 37,000 subscribers useful to a brand or a person?
So the person that purchased it, so the channel for context, was basically a Five Nights at Freddy's animation channel. So I used to do like animations around Five Nights at Freddy's. I did a lot of things. I've had 8 or 9 YouTube channels. This was the only one that kind of got bigger. So that was a Five Nights at Freddy's animation channel. And that niche was very, very strong. Like, I don't know, there was just at that time, the niche of source filmmaker animations, Five Nights at Freddy's was just really, really booming. And this was another animator who like wanted to get into the game. And it's very easy because it's not like a personality channel. It's based around animations for him to just purchase the channel and pick up where I left off with his own stuff. It was generating decent cash as well. I think it was making, you know, maybe like 200 a month or whatever. So like he would have made his investment back in, you know, 10 months. And he probably could have grown it. The channel was getting decent viewership as well. And his content quality was better than mine. So it was a case of like, he could just take the channel, do similar content. No one would know there was really a switch almost, and kind of go from there. So that was like almost the value from that niche at that specific time. Obviously it would differ. I would say now, like I wouldn't say anyone would buy potentially like a 37,000 subscriber channel now, but it was specific to that niche, and that's why it worked. And I just wanted to get rid of it because I didn't want to do YouTube anymore at that point. I was more in the business side, and obviously it was good to get a payment at that point and at that age.
How old were you again?
15.
15. And then you worked for ESL?
Yeah, I worked for ESL when I turned 16 in 2018.
Who are ESL and what do they do and what was your role there?
So ESL is the world's biggest esports company. I still think they are. I'm definitely know they are because they purchased another one, which I think boosted their valuation. But they're the world's biggest esports company. So literally everything esports, like ESL is probably associated somehow. There's a few like big esports companies, there's like ESL, Faceit, and the other one that they bought, which I forgot the name of, which is now part of ESL. But there's like a few that ESL basically run all the big major tournaments. So like if you think of like the Football World Cup that's going on right now, ESL run like the CS:GO world equivalent of the World Cup, or all the majors. You know, that's where they're the big money. So they do everything esports ESL cover. So I was hired into ESL to work in their, what they had was called the ESL Video Network. And that was essentially their MCN division of ESL. And what an MCN is, it's basically a multi-channel network. And it was a thing that was very big back in the YouTube space back in the day. So essentially what it was YouTube gave access to third-party content providers who were MCNs. They were allowed to partner YouTube channels to their CMS, and then take
What's
a
CMS?
content management system. So YouTube have like a content owner and content management system, which meant essentially they would give access to some companies, which were called MCNs. They could then partner a channel and take the channel. They would be responsible for that channel's AdSense. So instead of like on YouTube, when you go to your dashboard, you can get paid out via YouTube from AdSense. YouTube would pay out all of those partners' AdSense to the MCN. The MCN would then handle the payouts, and they would take a percentage of the YouTuber's earnings in return for whatever services they were providing, whether that's like brand deal help or growth or whatever it was at the time, free music libraries. So I was hired for their MCN division, and that's like the space that I've been working in from when I was like 13 to 16 previously. Like when I discovered YouTube and big YouTube business, I started working at some MCNs. But I was hired there as like a junior account manager, and what I was meant to do was basically partner channels to the ESL MCN and help them with growth, but also getting them brand deals, because this was where like brand deals were becoming a lot more prevalent at the time and becoming a much larger portion of creators' income than solely AdSense. And then additionally to that, ESL had a lot of gaming brands that would run influencer marketing campaigns with ESL as an agency. So we're almost like ESL's agency. And I was working with the team on like campaigns for like Tommy Hilfiger to like go into the gaming market. I think they released like a gaming line and they wanted to promote it via gaming. So I learned a lot, and this was like my sort of major like big break in influencer marketing. That's where I learned majority of like my trade. Obviously I had all the experience before me, but this is where I really understood like how a corporate company worked, how big creators operated, how big brands operated, the pitching process, how how to actually negotiate what like CPMs were, CPEs, like all the cost per metrics that you need to know. So that's what I did at ESL. And I was hired there. I was like a freelancer because I was still in school. And the whole kind of idea was that I would work as part of the team as a freelancer. And then once I finished school, I think a year and a half later, it was around that time, I would like go work for them in their Germany HQ and join like the team officially. So
I bet your classmates like just felt so disenfranchised
no
from
one
your
knew.
story.
No one knew at the time. I didn't tell anyone. I was not a massive fan of like telling people what I was up to, especially at that time.
Why?
Because when I did YouTube, for example, to begin with, how I see it is, especially within school culture. I don't know if it's a Scottish thing or just a school culture. If anyone's trying to do something a little bit different, people try and bring it down because it's like against the status quo. Like it's not really, it's not viewed as like normal. Everyone's just like, wants to do school, party, like be popular, whatever. That's how it was. And like if anyone was trying to do something different, people like tear it down, think it was cringe. So when I used to do YouTube, when I first started it, like I would get like a lot of like, I'm just gonna use the word abuse because we call it that, like abuse for like doing the YouTube, and to be honest, probably deserved it. The content was awful, but like I got a lot of that. So when I started taking things more seriously, I didn't really like tell anyone about it. I was just focused on doing it myself. I didn't really want to talk about it because I feel like when you also make things public and put it out there, people like to I don't know, get involved some places. I think it's the same with relationships. Like I don't really talk about relationships much anymore because people just like to involve themselves in areas. So especially with like this, I just didn't want anyone to like ask questions, involve themselves. So I think one of my mates knew, who was like also just kind of interested in like web design, trying to make money online as well. So I told him, we discussed it, and I remember I told him in chemistry, and I was like, yeah, it's like 800 euros, it's nothing music. Like, so like, you're like 16, like, and you're making like no one else is like making this much money like in our school, like at our age. And that was pretty perspective putting for me, but no one knew. I didn't really tell anyone at the time, until like I think the year after is when people started kind of finding out about what I was up to and the story. And it's funny because obviously like when you start getting success, like people switch up. So the people who were like doing that abuse, or then they switch up later on. But so I didn't really say anything to anyone at that time.
Given your parents both had really respectable, well-paying jobs, what intrigued you to be entrepreneurial and be responsible for your own income?
That's an interesting one because I don't really think I have an answer for this because I don't necessarily know. Like obviously, like if someone's comes from a poor upbringing, right, they feel like it's a necessity. They have to go and make something themselves, from their parents, for their family. And like for me, I've not come from like a, ultra wealthy family, but I've come from, we're comfortable. They're both doctors. Did I need to do any of that? No, because, I was funny off my parents. But I always feel like it's more admirable when people who don't need to do anything actually have that insight and want to go and do it. I don't know whether it was just like, I've always been very ambitious and just wanted to like make something myself. Like I have always definitely we did this personality test back in school, like what you look at most when it comes to career, whether that's like happiness, status, money, whatever. And I definitely had always been someone who was very interested in like status and money. That's just what the and I was always interested in status specifically. So I think it was more just from an idea of like ambitions of like, I wanted to get to this place. When I first started it, like I wasn't really doing it for the money. I just did it because it was fun and a hobby. Like I wasn't making really all that much money for the first 3 years, like when I was 13 to 16. But I think it was just like, I was always just thinking outside the box, a bit ambitious, and wanted to try and make something of myself from like a status standpoint, I think is what pushed me.
Given the fact that you even admitted that gaming, especially at the age of 13, was quite a nerdy thing to do,
Yeah.
quite an introverted thing to do, you probably spent quite a lot of time by yourself doing that. When you garnered success, do you think the need or lust for status came from kind of dismantling the archetype of being a nerdy gamer? Do you think that's where it came from? Kind of.
I don't think so, because I've always been very extroverted and confident. Like I don't know, I was just really enjoy gaming. Like that's why I was saying I wasn't necessarily like nerd, because I would still like I would still play sports. I had a good friend group. Like I would go out like whatever with my friends. I wasn't like one of the stereotypical, when you think of gamers, just always inside behind glued to their screen. I loved it. I played with my mates and stuff, but I was also I like to do other stuff, confident, outgoing. So I don't think it really was because of that. I think it was just looking for status in any realm of life, whether it was through gaming, online influencer, or whether it came through, I remember I'd always actually wanted to be like, I think it was, I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon, but I was always wanted to be like the number one orthopedic surgeon that everyone knew of. Like I wanted to be like a thought leader in my space. So it could have come through that, as opposed to whether it came through the gaming route. So I don't necessarily think it was from that trying to break out the archetype, because I've always been very, like, honestly, too loud, to be honest, and too outgoing. And I used to get in trouble for that a lot at school. So it's very weird to think that like I was on one hand like inside doing that, but on the other hand not. Like it's quite a broad route.
Working for ESL gave you probably guaranteed employment after school, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Do you think the necessity for status or being known as the best was what, or at least one of the driving factors that forced you to leave ESL to start things by yourself? So you had all of the credit allocation for success.
A little bit, but it came from like a different. That is definitely, I'm sure, like one part of it, and I thought about it towards when I was leaving, but it more so sparked from another sort of period of my life at the same time. So basically, when I was working at ESL, I was unfortunately diagnosed with cancer. So I was diagnosed with a cancer called stage 2A Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I was diagnosed with that sort of a month into starting at ESL. So I started ESL on like the 1st of January and got this diagnosis on the 23rd of February, which was not ideal because I'd only been there for a month and like 23 days. But that was the main catalyst for me leaving ESL, and it does tie into the status aspect, because basically when I was diagnosed, I was going through chemotherapy. I was in a group of people that had an 85% chance to live, right? So I was pretty much, odds were there that a young guy getting it first time was going to get cured first time because they caught it relatively early. But it was the idea of like, there was that voice in the back of my head that's like, what if you're in that 15%? So, what if you're not actually going to make it? What if you're not going to be alive? And I think that was like the whole perspective shift at that point, which kind of brought this out a lot more, which made me realize that if I wanted to get this status, leave this legacy, build this impact, be known for anything, I had to do it now. You know what I mean? Like if I was going to potentially die. So that, I think, was the trigger catalyst to bring that part out of me and realize, I have to do this right now. Because that was always like much more of a long-term play for me, the whole status, getting known. If I'd gone through chemotherapy and had that experience, then I probably would maybe still, be in uni doing a job, and maybe I would have started a business and tried to become successful in my 30s. But that was like the driving factor that made me do it right there and then, and brought that part out of me. So yeah.
I would have guessed anyone who was in treatment for chemotherapy, their main focus would be to rest and use all of their bandwidth in recovery. But you did the opposite. You built something magnificent, which I'm guessing was intense to do during a period of your life where you were incredibly sick.
Yeah, so I've always been a person that like I just like to get things done, and I didn't want to be treated any differently or do anything differently. Like I didn't, again, when I got ill, I didn't tell anyone about it. My school told me I should basically drop out for that year. I still did my hires in school. I was like, I don't want to be any different. I want to get it done. And I was still doing work at ESL, and they asked me about if I, needed time to do whatever or leave. And I was like, no, I just want to continue, because it's that whole aspect for me. I wanted to be the same normal Sue that everyone knew, and not let this get in the way, because I don't really like letting personal things get in the way of business. And also from the aspect of that, I almost forgot about the situation I was in because I was working and building something. Like I was sat in like the chemo ward, and you'd forget, because I don't know if it's the same with you, but for me, when I'm so like focused on one thing and so focused on building something, I almost forget about everything else in the situation I'm in. And it's obviously, it can be good and it can be damaging, but I almost forgot about the situation I was in half the time. I was like so infatuated by the work I was doing, and then started building the business during chemo as well. So I almost forgot that I was, a cancer patient, and it was almost it was a release for me, I feel, other than, thinking about this bad situation I was in all the time, because I feel like that could have probably taken me down a pretty bad path mentally if I just, thought about, oh, I'm in a shit situation, life isn't good, nothing's good right now. I try to take the positives from these situations, because I feel like when you are faced with some trauma, you can either go up or down, and I like refuse to like let myself go down in that situation.
What were the effects of chemotherapy, like the day to day of it? Were you incredibly sick?
Yeah, so I got chemo basically once every 2 weeks on a Friday. So I was basically 12 rounds for 6 months. I think that's the right calculation. So I got 4 types of chemo into me, and each of them sort of have a different side effects. So one of them sort of affects your lungs and your breathing. So like I've always got to be very careful. Like I had to check that a lot after I came out of chemo, about going back to sport and stuff, and what lungs and heart and whatever. One of them had an effect on my heart, so I had like heart problems after chemo that I had to get treated for, that I still go every year to like just go get a checkup and whatnot. At the time specifically though, you get what is called chemo brain, is one of the side effects. So basically like your brain's almost quite foggy a lot of the time, so you have to like take a lot more time to process things and think about stuff. You feel awful and sick. So every chemo session I had, you would get also anti-sickness tablets pumped into you, but when I come home I would just throw up everything. After you're like disconnected from that, it makes you very, very sick. Your pee, my pee went red for some aspects of it, because one of the ones I got put into me was called bleomycin, and it was a red thing, so my pee was red for a little bit after it. And generally you just feel like, when you get like a flu or whatever, and you just feel really unwell. So I felt like that, and just incapable to do stuff for like the first week of it. By about 1 week in, you start kind of recovering, which is when I was sort of more thinking about the business and focusing on that. And then obviously you're smacked with it again at the end of that second week. So it's just kind of like a reoccurring cycle of getting treatment, feeling like shit, slowly coming up, recovering, and then kind of getting back to that peak on the Thursday, the peak of whatever the peak could be, you're going through chemotherapy, and then you get hit with it again on Friday. So that's what it was like. But yeah, it definitely has a lot of side effects that come with it. I don't know what it is. It's dependent on each chemo. Each chemotherapy is different for different people. You don't get the same one. So I got ABVD, but there's people next to me getting completely different things, who I think had different side effects to me. So it's very dependent.
Do you remember the day your treatment kind of officially ended and how you felt?
Yeah, I've got a photo of it on my phone. So my mum would come with me to all of them, because my dad would go with me. So I went on Thursdays to get blood done. My dad would come with me. Mum would come with me on Fridays, and just sit with me. And I remember basically, you know, when I first went, it's just, you know, nurse comes in, last one, you know, it's the last one, you know, there's that kind of hype to get it finally done. My mum's like sat there with me, like holding up, because one of the chemos like burns when going up, so I had to have like a kind of like hot thing around my hand to like open your veins up. So she's like sitting there, and that's the last chemo, like it's the D one, and that was the last one was going up me, and she sat there. I've got a photo of my hand, like holding her hand with it, and I remember she just saying, just a little bit more, and literally just a little bit more, because it was like really, really painful, just trying to keep me going through it. And then they took the cannula down and it was done. And I remember got in the car, took a Snapchat story, cancer, hashtag completed it, mate. It was just such a good feeling. Obviously I felt like shit still that day, but yeah, it was such a good feeling to think that I didn't have to go back in 2 weeks to do this. And then I think it was 2 weeks later, I got like I think I had to go for like another test. I think it was an MRI scan to like make sure that like the chemo had worked. Got taken in by the person who said it's worked, you're done. And then that was just one of the best feelings, I think, that, you know, I'd you know, because my life had been pretty grim for the last 6 months, and I was like, I'm finally done with this, and I can just, you know, spend the next few months recovering and get back to normal.
Did you almost feel like a release valve kind of released itself, almost like you had more mental bandwidth? If it's like a hard drive, you had more RAM or more gigabytes to use on your business and life now, because you could forget about something that was so all encompassing for the last 6 months. Did you have more mental bandwidth to focus on other things?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, because like the chemo brains wasn't part of it. So like, you know, if I was, say, for example, maybe operating at like 60% of what I could have because of the chemo brain, now I had the extra 40%, you know, to think about. But also, you know, as much as I say that, you know, the business and what I was doing, I try to not think about it. You know, it's still it's cancer at the end of the day. Like, you're gonna think about it. It's an all encompassing experience. So definitely, it was like released. I don't have to think about this anymore. I don't have to think about coming back in 2 weeks and the shit I'm gonna go through when I'm there, how painful it's gonna be, how disgusting I'm gonna feel for the next week. I just didn't have to think about that anymore, and now I could just focus on getting back to normal and building this business to what I wanted to get to.
So where did you build it to? What happened next?
Yeah, so when did I finish chemo? So it was around September. So I started the business in June of 2018. So during chemo, started basically myself. So Saulderson Media is the business I run. It's an influencer marketing company and talent management business. Started primarily as just a talent management company at the time. What I essentially did was able to bring some of the partners I signed to ESL over and some of the brands. So we kind of got quickly started from there. September obviously comes, you know, we're continually building. And then after the sort of chemo experience and kind of getting remission, a lot of people found out about like the story. I think it was just through I think it was through a teacher of mine had sent it to another teacher in the school or something who did like the press stuff. Then I got put in the paper, and then a bunch of people started finding out about stuff, which heavily built like a lot, you know, got a lot of interest from creators and brands. You know, just wanted to work with me because of the story and like the fact that, you know, they could tell I was obviously going to put in a lot of effort if I'd done this. And that was around December, and because of that growth, I think we managed to turn over 6 figures in that first 6 months. It was on TV, bunch of press, radio, won an award. And then that's, I think, the time when I realized, wow, this could actually really be something, you know? So I hired someone to come work with me in that December, and myself and him, who's still with me in the team, one of the most loyal team members, you know, kind of from there just went and started doing what I was doing, but double capacity, and started building from there with the talent. Not slowly, but quite quickly actually realized that the main money in the space wasn't from solely just managing content creators. It was actually from the brand side, that it was managing campaigns for brands, because they're the ones that hold the money. They're the ones that are spending primarily in the space. So we then adapted the agency from being solely talent management into being an influencer marketing agency servicing brands in gaming and esports and tech, because that's the bread and butter niches that we were in. And I've grown and built over the last 4.5 years from there. We have a team of around 10ish people right now, currently hiring. So for some new starters in the new year, and we're servicing all sorts of brands now, primarily still gaming, esports, and tech, but some pretty huge names now. Also big names in other niches. I've worked with huge creators. Have a bunch of different sort of services now, other than just talent management, influencer marketing. We do sort of syndication stuff, help creators get investments for their content, so they can basically get upfront investment for say 5 years worth of content to get a quick amount of money up front. So it's like almost like investing in creators. So, and then the kind of investors would then collect their AdSense over 5 years. So we do stuff like that. We've done other things like production for our clients. So it's really built into a much bigger version of what it was then. And we're always kind of constantly expanding on what we're going to offer in our vision and our services. So right now really is, it's the end of 2022. So I'm thinking about sort of the vision for 2023 and the strategy of like, what do we want to be known for and how do we want to scale and build from there. But yeah, it's been a very fun 4.5 years.
I understand the jargon completely. Like I'm a YouTube fanatic myself. Like I'm in the game to some degree. That being said, some of the listeners might not know what talent management is, or influencer marketing. In like plain English, what is talent management and influencer marketing?
Yeah, so
and how do you service?
So very layman terms, start with talent management. Essentially, if you think about how, say, a celebrity or a model has, or an artist has, they've got a manager and a management team that handle all the business side of their creative flow. So the negotiations, sponsorships, brand deals, like everything that's on the business commercial side, we do that, but for online social media influencers. So YouTubers, TikTokers, Twitch streamers, you name it, we handle their business side, and we essentially let the creators create, and we take over the busy sort of back end side. The whole kind of tagline is helping online content creators turn their passion into a long-standing career through commercializing them. So we do things like, primarily the main services that most talent management companies will do is helping their creators get sponsorships and brand deals across their videos. That's the kind of main thing. We also help with creative strategy for their videos. If they have ideas of what they want to do, how can we flesh this out to make it maybe more viral, or that make the metadata better. We do sort of, as I say, sponsorships, brand deals, negotiations, help them with platform specific deals. So for example, streaming deals across Facebook, Twitch, paid partnerships along those side, opportunities for events and appearances. So we have one of our creators who's scheduled for a big appearance at an event in Sydney next year, and he's a Scottish creator. So things like that we handle. Essentially, like, there's a lot of different services in the whole sort of talent management. Everything comes under like, how can we commercialize that creator and their content? So a lot of the traditional ones that people think about when they think of a YouTuber is selling merchandise. These are very basic, easy ones, but then there's obviously other stuff, like if creators want to start a brand or want to do a big project. So one of the coolest projects we've done is a creator came to us and was like, he's a Fortnite creator. I was like, I want to make a video. I don't know how this is going to work. Basically winning a game of Fortnite in space. And I was like, okay, so this is some of the stuff we do. We then ideate, right? How do we make this work? And then how much money are we going to need to make this video happen? What partners are we going to need? And that's the kind of production aspect in the background. So we made that work. We partnered with a Scottish company called Stratonauts, and they launch basically like an edge of space company. They launch things up into space. So we basically work with them to engineer this sort of thing where we put a phone in it that was playing a video that this YouTuber had pre-recorded on loop. So it looked, and then we made the video look as if he was playing it from the ground. So actually controlling from the ground, it was all edited in that way. And then basically when the balloon popped at the edge of space, the game of Fortnite was won. And then it's like the whole point of the game of Fortnite video went viral. I think it got like 4 odd million views. We had a sponsor involved who sponsored the whole project. Went down to somewhere in England. I don't remember where it was. Maybe it was Durham. Somewhere in England to like launch it. It was very fun. But like, these are some of the things that we do for our talent. Is what they couldn't do solo. We pick up and really what I say is a lot is like, if a creator can gain more time from working with the management and make more money for working with management, that's when they need a sort of a team to surround them. So that's sort of talent management. And then the influencer marketing side is I'm going to make it a very, very simple scenario. So let's say, Converse or whatever, Nike, they're releasing a new product, right? So they're releasing a new line of Air Force Ones. They want to get it out to a certain target market and they're trying to think what's the potential best way to do this. Maybe they're doing traditional advertising with one budget, they're doing social media advertising with another budget, and they have a budget for influencer marketing. They want to spend 100 grand on getting their product out to their certain target market. So we as the agency would then take that brief that they give us of, right, we have 100 grand, we want to reach XYZ amount of people, and we want this sort of timeline, this kind of, niche of people, this demographic, and we will then ideate and work up the best way and best route to market for that so that's the first kind of piece of the creative strategy and ideation of, right, okay, so maybe we get 10 macro creators to do custom challenges with the Air Forces or, something. This is, again, just coming up in my head. And then we do like a big challenge giveaway where it's like we maybe get artists to design stuff on Air Force Ones, whatever kind of creative. So we did the creative ideation to start with, plan that, pitch that to the client. They want to go ahead, then we manage the whole campaign process. So essentially that 100K that the Nike want to spend to reach this target audience, we as the agency manage that spend, get it out there, utilizing influencers as that like paid media. So instead of like a Facebook ad, we might use an influencer ad, and we handle that as the agency, obviously take our cut and kind of handle that whole process from ideation all the way through to execution, and then after live reporting to essentially hit their target KPIs.
That makes complete sense to me. Do you have like a roster or database of influencers that you exclusively work with, or is it on a more ad hoc basis? Are they signed to you? What's the model of it?
So for the talent management side, we have a roster that's signed to us exclusively. And then on the influencer marketing side, we work for the brand. So we just essentially utilize the best creators that can fit that brand. It's a very we try to keep the companies relatively, or the divisions relatively separate, because we try to go for a very unbiased approach in both ways. Like, we don't want to be recommending our exclusive talent to brands if it's not the right fit. And likewise, we don't want to be trying to just get our exclusive talent to work in our brand campaigns because it's going to benefit us. So we keep them relatively separate, but we have a roster of exclusive talents, and then we have a kind of extended roster of non-exclusive talents who don't want to sign with the management company, but we're like a preferred agency. So they may want to run more brand deals with us, or want us to manage certain things, or trust us more, or maybe only work with us in another agency, or ask us for different bits of help. And there's kind of different agreements in there. The other creators on this side is we will simply discover and find the best creators that fit that specific brief and that specific campaign for the brand at that time.
How do you prove the efficacy of the campaigns back to the brand? Do you have like data on like how that's converted to sales?
Yeah.
How does that work?
So it depends on what the goals are for the brand. So the brand, when they're kind of coming to us with like the brief and the RFP, may have, right, this is purely an awareness campaign. This is purely an engagement campaign. We're trying to basically get consideration in this one, and we're trying to get conversions, right? So depending on whatever the goals is depending on the conversion. So if it's like simply a awareness and engagement campaign, it's simply based around the views, the engagement, and sort of the mass awareness of that. If it's obviously a sales one, then we track the whole funnel all the way from that first view to that engagement, to that link click, to then that sale, and it's all tracked with sort of online tracking mechanics, because you can do that. We have a influencer marketing platform in the back end, which we can kind of track everything through there as well, which has integrations with things like Shopify. So we can track Shopify sales via it as well. So you can get exactly what influencer is being paid, their viewership, their engagements, and exactly where that marketing spend. So if we spent 500 quid on this influencer, how much money they made them back, like the exact sales result. Or if it's, purely an awareness campaign, it's like, okay, what's the earned media value of this, for the spend on this creator? Like, how much would we have had to spend on other advertising platforms to get the same amount of exposure? And that's where you can kind of see the results from there. So it's all tracked. It's very data driven. Most of the influencer campaigns now the two main things are the data and also the creative behind them. Because, brands, they're very ruthless, and like they need to know exactly where their marketing dollars are getting spent.
So I'm sitting here listening to you, and you're spouting so much business acumen, and I'm lucky I work in like a corporate landscape where I understand it.
Yeah.
But you started by doing this in your bedroom as a 13-year-old child, and then worked for an esports agency, and now you have this Rolodex of terms and understanding. Where did you get all this information and education from?
A lot of it was just learning. And that's why I say, like, everyone looks to me right now, like as a 21-year-old who sort of has some relative success. I wouldn't call it success yet in my terms, relative success, and thinks that it's like, you're so young, it's like overnight success, you just got there. But like, as I said, like, I've been doing this for like 8 years. So I have gone through trial and errors and tribulations, like learning things. Most of my learnings have just come from doing what I need to do, seeing it going wrong, or something not happening, and then learning, right, this is why it didn't go wrong, then this is why it didn't go right. Research online. I honestly think that because of the day and age we live in, you can virtually learn everything. There's probably things you can't, but you can virtually learn everything, especially about online business and advertising and marketing online. So I just spent a lot of time learning from free things or courses, or learning from, different like Google documentation or whatever, or learning from people in the industry. I had a few mentors who were bigger guys in the industry, and maybe who taught me a few things. But a lot of it has just come from getting myself surrounded in these kind of online educational things, and learning from there. I did go to uni for 3 years. That definitely taught me a lot about sort of I did economics there, so it taught me about the economy, particularly like supply and demand, a lot of some stuff about sales. But in terms of like marketing and influence of marketing, I learned that kind of purely all from my years of experience online.
You've been recognized for winning many awards, including, and it's where I actually picked up on you winning Scottish Edge's Young Edge.
So I won the Young Edge, and then we also won the main Edge.
Did you?
Yeah.
That's mad.
Yeah.
How did that feel? For me, that's such a hallmark competition in Scotland for startup businesses. Yeah. The fact that you won Young Edge and then the main award, how did that make you feel?
That was amazing. I think I'm Scottish Edge's youngest ever winner still. So I like when I won the Young Edge, I was like their youngest winner. And
how old were you?
I just turned 18. So the day that the applications closed was the day I turned 18, which is why I was allowed to apply, because their whole thing is like you have to be 18 to enter it. So I submit the application the day I turned 18. But that was like huge for me, because that was the first, like, I mean, I won money firstly, which is massive, but that was like, I didn't really know much about Scottish Edge before that until I got introduced to it from I think it was like an RBS business group that I was part of. And I looked into it, and it was like a very prestigious thing, because like it's backed by the government, Scottish enterprise, like literally Scottish entrepreneurship sort of resonates and resides with Scottish Edge. And it's, now I've judged for them as well, like now after being through it, like it's the hallmark of Scottish entrepreneurship, really. So at the time, before I didn't know much about it, when I won and started to learn more about it, I was like, this is huge, especially for for as a Scottish entrepreneur. It definitely put me on the map in Scottish entrepreneurship. Like a lot of people started knowing about me in the Scottish ecosystem. I was getting a lot of recommendations and whatnot, but it was a very, very, it was an amazing experience, because as well, the award ceremony was at this like big place in Edinburgh. I can't remember. I think it was the RBS. That was RBS it. That was trying to remember the name, and you got it. And it was an amazing ceremony, and it was like really beautifully put on, and there was like loads of interesting people, and like, seeing there was talks, I think, from Sir Tom Hunter, and like I can't remember who it was from Brewdog, but one of the founders. And it's like, it's a big deal when like guys like this, who are like the pinnacle of Scottish entrepreneurship, are backing this thing. So it was an amazing experience.
I think I must have been at the same one watching it. Stephen Hamill, the CEO there, invited me along. So you must have been at the very same one.
Yeah, I think I was round 14 was the one that I won the Young Edge for, and then amazing. I think round 17 was a Scottish Edge, but that round 14 was when I think it was 2019 summer, so maybe, but it was a really good event.
That being said, do you feel, and we spoke offline before we came on the podcast about how you want to be known for success in light of your cancer. You don't want to be known for the kid that beat cancer and is a successful entrepreneur. You want to just be a successful entrepreneur known as that in its own merit. Do you think getting those awards either enhanced that vision or perception of you of the cancer survivor entrepreneurship, or helped you credentialize yourself enough to move away from that as your identity?
I think the former. So I haven't applied for or looked to win any awards in a while, and it's been because of this. So I personally think that a lot of like, you know, as much as I would hope to think it's not, but it's just like a personal thing in my head. Like I feel like if I didn't have that cancer story, would they have looked as highly on me from those awards? Because I think everyone, when it's like, you know, you see the business success from a young guy, that's amazing. You see that with cancer, that kind of pushes it over the edge. So for me, I feel like, especially when I was younger, when I started winning those awards, I feel like a lot of them came because of that press and that story. So I think I've won like six awards, and I don't think I've won any in the last two years, because we've not like put myself, we've not applied for any, or put yourself forward. And that's simply because, like, obviously when we're applying for the awards, you got to talk about your story, the entrepreneur. And I just, for some reason, just have this nagging thought in my head that it's, I'm winning because of that story. And that is the thing that I'm trying to move away from, because it was 4 years ago. It's obviously, to anyone thinking about it, it's a very inspiring story. I'm sure and that's one thing I really want to do. I want to inspire people. I want to use my story and my journey to inspire younger people to take action in their lives, whether that's entrepreneurship or whether it's anything else. That's like a big purpose of mine. That I've literally just said my mission statement on the podcast. That's like a big purpose of mine. So, I love talking about this story. I love using that story to inspire, but I don't want to just be known as that guy I don't want to be known online or in the entrepreneurship space because, and everyone comes to me is like, oh, your story is so inspiring. And like, it's the first thing to say. It's like, why can't you come to me and, your views on this are inspiring, or, this campaign you did was amazing. I want to be known for just me as an entrepreneur and not me as that guy who got cancer and became an entrepreneur young. So I'm trying to move away from that. And it's like a purposeful thing right now. That's why I've not applied for any awards, because I want to do something that I feel is very big and meritable in entrepreneurship before like trying to apply for anything further. I want that sort of, I just want like all my kind of new brand and everything that, I do and talk about now to come from a thought leader and someone that's actually taken seriously because what they say is interesting.
Have you convinced yourself that you deserve the success on your own merit yet? Are you still working towards that? Has there been a point where you've thought, I've made it because of me now, not because of my story?
I think so, yeah, because like from the business standpoint, it was only good for a certain period of time when people were interested and got into that. But like, from Saulderson, that can only go so far. But a lot of the success we have from business are obviously just because of the good work that we've been able to do, and the brand, the stuff we've been able to do for our creators and the success of the campaign. So I think definitely from a influencer marketing and business and Saulderson standpoint, yes, I don't think it's purely because of the story. But there is obviously still that thing in my head that always, it's that imposter syndrome of like, am I lucky? That's why I'm here. You know what I mean? Like, because I personally don't, you're never gonna know. It's like what Kanye West said. I guess they'll never know. Like, I'll never know.
Can't mention his name.
I know, I can't mention. Let's cut that one out. I don't know. But it's like I will never know. Like, would I be sat here today and have had this success if it wasn't from cancer? I personally don't think I would have. I think I would probably still be in uni or whatever. And even if I had started the business at the same point, I don't think I would have been as expedited because of this. So in a way, yes, because a lot of the work that we have done as a company has, just shone and just done very, very well. And that's nothing to do with me and my story. Obviously earlier on it was to do so, but from like an entrepreneurship in a personal sense, I still kind of battle with that every so often. And like, people don't realize that. And I think I know it's quite good, like opening and stuff like this. Like, when you talk to people as an entrepreneur, and especially a young entrepreneur, they only see like the social media stuff and like, travel, whatever, it's all cool. But like, people don't realize like the internal battles you go through. And I think I definitely like, I still often battle with like that and a bunch of other things pretty frequently.
I know the feeling. Where I work, I'm the poster boy because I'm young. I have a podcast that I come from a lower socioeconomic background, like poor kid done good type story. And I know that's not going to be my identity forever. I'm going to be hopefully a middle-class, middle-aged man, and I'm not going to be as marketable at one point. And I'm cautious of the life cycle of my own personal brand.
Yeah.
And that's why I started the podcast. That's why I'm trying to do things externally. Have you thought about the life cycle of your own personal brand? How, because you're not going to be the young, successful Scottish entrepreneur for much longer. That's going to be someone else who's going to be getting those headlines. Have you thought about what the next 5-10 years of personal branding personally for you will look like? Because I've looked online, and if I look at your Instagram now, it's kind of, it's moved away from the sweet cancer survivor story, if I'm honest, to like fast cars, cigars, partying. Was that a deliberate move, and how are you implementing that ethos moving forward?
So that wasn't necessarily a deliberate move. That's just because that's just the way that life went. And I started surrounding myself with other young entrepreneurs that I knew who were living this lifestyle. It was fun. I love traveling. Like, that's a massive passion for me. So a lot of my content is around traveling and fun stuff. I'll do traveling. I'm trying to live a bit of a nomad lifestyle at the moment. So that wasn't a deliberate move, but like, that is a general move that a lot of young money and young entrepreneurship people get into and make, because in like the online, like if you're like an online entrepreneur and, for example, trying to sell, say, a course or an info product, people buy the lifestyle as opposed to, they buy the results and the lifestyle as opposed to like the product. So like, you know, there's a few big names in the space that like, I'm not gonna give them any clout in your podcast, but there's a few people that everyone knows in the social media space who have literally, they become successful because people have bought into that lifestyle that they've built. That wasn't necessarily a deliberate move or a you know, a personal branding vision of mine of like, right, I want to start like an online educational group or a course, so I'm gonna start portraying this lifestyle. That's just because that's what I started doing, and I enjoyed traveling. But
it was a lifestyle that you were living.
It was a lifestyle I was living, but at the same time, has it had its benefits for, you know, other stuff that I've done online or networking with people like this, or this online educational group that I currently run as well? For sure it has. Right now with me, like personal branding wise, I'm trying to, I hadn't really done it for a lot. I've started doing it a lot more now over the last like month. I've just been really focused on short form, especially from like podcasts like this and stuff. I'm recording my own content as well. I'm really trying to focus on getting content out there, and more so shifting from that cancer story to like people respecting my voice as a thought leader in different areas, and like what my opinion is as an entrepreneur, as a young entrepreneur who's become successful because he's intelligent and he's put in the work and whatnot. Have I thought about it in the long term? No, not yet, because I'm very early in my personal branding journey. Like for me, like I all the other stuff prior wasn't really deliberate. I've now actually deliberately, like one of the guys on my team, I'm working with him to like, right, how do we push this content out and grow from there? In the future, I want to be a tech entrepreneur, so it'll probably shift into something like that. I want to, you know, I've always been pretty fascinated from like a high level on like how the way the world's evolving into artificial intelligence, robotics. So, you know, I probably will have to shift my personal brand to get into something like that. But I've not thought too much further off the aspect of the young, successful entrepreneur sort of personal brand yet, because at the end of the day, I'm still 21, and like I in my opinion, my life cycle for that still has around like 2, 3, 4-ish years. Like I think maybe when I'm 25, it's not as interesting like from that anymore. You're still very young.
It depends if you live the Dan Bilzerian life.
Yeah, it depends, and he's been doing that for a long time, and to be fair, he's blown up a lot more recently as well, because I didn't really used to like follow his content much, but he's everywhere right now, and it's worked well for his Ignite vodka Ignite tequila. That, and everyone's, yeah, he's everywhere.
It's weird how the model has changed, where people would build a business and then a personal brand, kind of like what you did actually. Build the business first, and then because you build a successful business, you're forced into the public domain. And now the model is like people create a personal brand doing dances or whatever else, and then hinge products off of it.
I think that's so powerful now though. Like I said this, I did a talk at my old university. I was asked to basically speak to like this management this management module.
That's epic that you did that, even though you didn't finish your honors. That's so
yeah, cool. I know it is quite funny because I was doing a talk to a course where I knew like 3 of the people who were on that thing, so they're sat in the audience, and there was a point where I was like, right, I was talking about my story, and I was like, you guys have heard this like 20 times, so just zone out. But there was one thing where I said was like, I gave them like this. It was a header. It was like, what you need to do now in the 21st century if you want to have business success. And literally the first one was, you need to build a personal brand, because that is the way that the world has shifted. And the power of the personal brand now is that if you build yourself as opposed to building a brand, you can build any brand off yourself. Like look at Stephen Bartlett, for example. He's launching things left, right, and center, getting, you know, investments here, They just launched this new like interactive diary, and that's all simply because he's built himself as the personal brand. Most of the big online entrepreneurs now, you build yourself as a personal brand, it means you can build any product off it, because if one business fails, doesn't really matter. You've got these, you can start something else. You have that instant audience. Whereas before it was very different. It was like the businesses were the ones that were doing the talking as opposed to the founders. And I think as social media has grown and developed, then now people are more focused on the person and the face behind the companies.
There's a really great article called 1000 True Fans, and that's written by Kevin Kelly. I'll put it in the show notes. It's fantastic. Basically saying is, all you need to have business success is 1000 true fans, not followers, fans, people who just believe in your values, your lifestyle, and no matter what you sell, they'll buy it, whether it's tickets to an online gig or not an online gig, an event or a gig, or whether it's mugs or merchandise, they'll buy it because they're just so bought into your ethos. I had a gentleman called Nick Gatfield on the podcast a couple episodes ago, who was the ex-CEO of Sony Music. And that's his ethos within the music space now. Yeah, he's trying to build mailing lists opposed to building downloads. Yeah, just because he knows he has a captive audience if he gets his artists to have a mailing list, opposed to having, I don't know, an artist with 5 million streams, but no one's buying tickets to their gig. You know, like he's wary of like TikTok in the artist, you know, the music artist space. He's wary that these TikTok sounds and songs are popularizing music and they're getting loads of downloads, but that's not converting into gig tickets or merch. Yeah. Whereas he's been kind of nomadic and telling his artists to build like mailing lists, for example. Yeah, no, TikTok is one that is very big. It's not even just in the artist space, but TikTok is one where you can blow up very quickly and get a huge amount of exposure, but you don't really build a engaged fan base. You get width, not depth. Exactly. That's literally the perfect way to say it, which is why, like, even with us, like, we're encouraging, if any creator that we manage comes off of TikTok, diversify your content into other platforms, which are where you can build true engaged audiences and engaged fans. Mailing lists is a very interesting one you talk about, because like you always think like that sounds so ancient, you know, comparative to what's now, but it's so powerful, because if you have like an engaged audience of like 20,000 people in your mailing list, you just have continual marketing power directly to them, as opposed to them buying one thing of yours. If you keep that and you have that data. So like most of the people on like internet money, Twitter, which is like a very big niche, they're always banging on about building like a mailing list. They're always, all their tweets, they'll have like a very, very intense copy tweet down to a thread, and then sign up, subscribe for my mailing list. They'll get a bunch of people on their mailing list, and then they'll start trying to push product out via that way. It's a very interesting concept. Talking about status and material objects and kind of a high-paced lifestyle, I proposed a concept that I made up to Sir Tom Hunter when I had him on the podcast. I think I offended him for 3 seconds, then he laughed. Okay. But I called it the millionaire's menopause. Well, in his case, the billionaire's menopause, where, and you're probably at the hiatus of this right now, where you're very grassrooted, you're a startup, you don't have much, you're living quite frugally, and then there's a hockey stick where you can achieve your material desires. You're flashy, you buy the Gucci necklace, or you dress in fancy clothes, or have the fast cars and live the decadent lifestyle. And it gets to a point where, since you have achieved those material desires, you no longer want them. And then you stop wearing the designer brands, and you start, for example, he's started a charity, the Hunter Foundation, started giving his money away. If you think about your story, and I know you've got an amazing quote, that is leave it private until it's permanent, but I'm going to ask you, do you think your next maybe 10 years will be involved in giving money away, or philanthropy or charity? Do you think you'll hit a kind of menopause within the next 5 years? 100%. I think that I would say that I think money is is like the fourth thing on the list. There's I think there's 3 things above that personally, from like a societal standpoint, which is in no particular order: purpose, relationships / love, and then health, right? Money can only get you so far and do certain things, but like these 3 things, like you can't really fix with money. And also, it's a very boring life if all you're doing is chasing materialism. You get bored. It's like you get this car, and it's like, okay, I've got it now. Like, what's next? And you never really truly achieve that, you know, that overall purpose. And
you know, money's money. I think for me, like money is like an amplifier. Like it's not really like, it's not the main goal, but it allows you to achieve things that you want to achieve, right? And for me, as I say, like a big goal of mine, as I say, is to inspire others, and that's my purpose. Like, you know, but the money helps me get that because I can reach a much larger audience if I have more capital to do with it. I also I've also had this like thought about this a lot when I'm sort of like, you know, I think there's a difference between like rich and wealthy. Like rich is when you're sort of, you know, have a good amount of money, but wealth is when you have like, you know, 8 figures, 9 figures, whatever. I would rather be like very public and flashy, you know, now, and then have a very behind the scenes private life in the future when I become wealthy. So that is sort of what I would say is like, I you know, when you're young, get out your system, do all of that, but then go and, you know, enjoy fulfilling your purpose, look after your health, have your love and relationships in a more private. And I think a lot of the people that I know who are in that 8, 9 figure space, they're very, very low key. Like there's a lot of people that I've met who are very low, and you'll never know because you wouldn't think that until you talk to them. You see they're very intelligent, and you're like, what do you do? And then you get in the conversation. It's like you would never think that, but when it's like a lot of like these young money dudes, you see it everywhere, and there's just like that kind of flexy, flashy materials. But you get out of your system. For me, I would love to start a cancer charity. This is a thing that I've always wanted to do. Like ever since I got ill, I've always wanted to give back to the people that helped me. So one thing I want to do in the future is start a cancer charity. But for me, it's like, I can't do that without the capital. Like it's a cancer charity. You can't do that without some sort of amount of wealth. And when you have that amount of wealth, like you have the ability to do that, but you don't necessarily need that, like that extra million or whatever it is, you know, when you're at like Sir Tom Hunter's, it's not fulfilling. What does that do? It's more fulfilling when you have less. So I never think as I, you know, go around that curve, I will become probably more low key and focus on like, where can I actually use my resources to give back and benefit. Cancer charity is one of the things I've had in my mind. There's a couple of other projects that I've thought about. But it's definitely something that I would love to do. I'm very big on the whole aspect of like charity anyway right now. I just don't really talk about that much, but I donate a certain percentage every quarter to charity, particularly cancer charity. I've started training for the London Marathon to run for Teenage Cancer Trust. So I am still, you know, I've always wanted to do that because I think it's much more fulfilling because you just get to, I honestly think you can just lead yourself into depression if all you are chasing is the money. Whereas if you have these other things you want to achieve, then it's so much more beneficial.
Mate, it's so noble that you're doing that. And I think don't put too much pressure on yourself to be doing all this philanthropy at this age. You're 21. Like you need to live a little bit and enjoy some of the distractions that will come your way.
Yeah.
Whether it's the fast cars, the holidays, the women, or anything like that. Like I think you should enjoy the distractions. But that being said, do you have anything in place or people, advisors, family members, friends that kind of have to stop you from getting distracted? Because if I were you, I would perhaps lean into distractions more than I would like to at times, whether it's the partying or the girls or the cars.
I've definitely like learned a lot over this, especially this last year where I've led a lot into distractions in the travels or like, you know, especially when you're in that environment of other young, successful people who are spending money. It's almost like you wanna do more, you know, to like outshow that person. So I have definitely like led into a lot of distractions over the last year. 100%. Like there's 100% guarantee of that. I think my parents are very good for keeping me grounded. They've always been very, very good. Like when I talk about something of, you know, I want to get this or I want to do this, they're like, why? No, like it's you don't need to. Like I have a couple of friends who are sort of old, 4 or 5 years older than me, sort of sort of a step above me in entrepreneurship, and they're doing certain things, and I'm like, oh, maybe I want to get this. Like, you know, two of my friends bought McLarens, and I'm like, I don't have a McLaren, you know, but and it's like,
and you've got a Porsche outside.
Yeah, and my parents are like, so just come back down to reasonable level right now. Like think about the you know, this and that. So they keep me pretty grounded. I have a financial advisor and a tax advisor who, again as well are good in that. And like I've you know, a lot of money basically invested in different areas because I think it's, you know, much more sensible to invest your money. Instead of, for example, if I wanted to buy this car, instead of buying this car, why not invest that money somewhere else? And then when it compounds, you could buy 2 of those cars. You know what I mean? That's like that. That's like the whole thing. So I have a financial advisor and a tax advisor that are helpful when it comes to the monetary side. But my parents are definitely like they keep me grounded, because I think it's very difficult to not lead into distraction, especially when you're surrounded in that environment. And like environments obviously shift and change people. And when you're in a certain environment, you do certain things. And I've definitely learned a lot this year when have definitely spent stupid money on things. And I'm looking back, it's like, why did I do that? Or why did I go to this place? Or why did I buy this? Or, you know, why did I chase this girl or whatever it is? You know what I mean? You get into that habit, but my parents are good at that.
Two more questions before we wrap up, mate. What was it like to party with the Sidemen and KSI and some of the famous YouTubers that I see on your Instagram stories? How do they party? What was that like?
Yeah, that was a pretty mental experience, because I was expecting something mad, but like you almost don't forget that they're just like normal people. They're just wealthier. But it was I'll tell you about the KSI because it's quite interesting. So I got invited to it basically via content creator Lauren Alexis, who's like a business partner of mine. She's like an OnlyFans model. So her and her manager I work with on another project, and Lauren's very good friends with the Sidemen. Got us basically sort of in the VIP, like she invited us VIP with her to the KSI show at Wembley. Surreal experience, because I'm sat in the same area with like Simon and Ethan behind us and Josh, and like all the fans are like waving over our ear, and it's just like a mad experience, because like I'm there and it's just like, you know, there's artists, there's rappers, there's influential people, public figures, all in the same areas. I mean, and I'm there. Then there's like the VIP after party, which was like everyone a VIP, and it's just like I was in, you know, it just meant it was such a surreal experience from like when I was 13. I like idolized these guys. Like these are my role models from the gaming aspect, and I was there like partying with them. I'm quite friendly with JJ's editor Mo Saeed. So Mo introduced me to JJ at the event. It's you know, just cool, just like talking, very just like normal, humble guy. Like you obviously you don't realize that, like, because of like the big persona he puts on, but he's a very chill, like they're all just normal dudes. But it was very, very cool, because after the event, like Lauren and Jay were gonna drop me back at where I was staying, and then we get in the car and Lauren's like, that was just what we're saying. We're actually going to a after party. And this was like a even more closed off one, which was literally just the Sidemen, like their girlfriends and a few of like the close people. So then we get taken to, I can't remember what the private members club is. KSI is basically a member of this private members club in London. I forget which one it is. But we're queued up there. Me, Lauren, Jay, her manager, and then Lauren's well, actually no, she didn't have the bodyguard that night, because it was a different night. I'm thinking about, that was the Deji fight. But we go in there and it's like a private members club. So like I would never be in there unless I'm a member. And like we have like 2-3 tables to ourselves. I think it was like 20 grand. I was told that like JJ had dropped on it, and you know, it's like I'm there just like it was just so weird for me, because like I'm just like, why am I there? You know what I mean? It was like everyone else could have had a purpose of being there, because Lauren's friends, it's Lauren's manager. Obviously, I work with Lauren and Jay on the other business we do, but like I'm not involved in that scene, whereas Jay is. So it was a pretty mad one, just like bottles everywhere. It was funny because there's so much Prime everywhere. It was like Prime and vodka was the drink for the night. And the funny thing is, like KSI like paid for this whole thing. Like it was like his after party. I think it was like 20 grand into for whatever. And honestly, he just left. He came, partied for a little bit, and it's just like he dipped. Like couldn't think he could be bothered anymore, which is like mental to think that he's dropped 20 grand on this experience, and you know, it's obviously his experience, it's nothing to him, and it's just gone. Like, I mean, I wasn't too fussed. I was enjoying the alcohol and enjoying the experience, but like it was crazy. But again, like you forget that they're all like normal people. But it was really funny because they all have like Sidemen fan pages on TikTok and stuff. And like one of the girls that they're friendly with called Lexi Marie, who's like a YouTube girl, and put a bunch of like videos and stories from the after party. And like I'm there like dancing in the background, and all the comments are like, well, yo, when did Vic look like that? Like when did Vic get jacked or whatever? And it's just funny because like I'm like a lot of my friends were like sending me like come up the For You page, like, why are you in the Sidemen fan page? And I was like, yeah, it's crazy. And then was at the Deji fight the next week after, like sitting in like ringside, like second row of ringside behind like all the sidemen with Lauren and stuff, and like I'm on like the pay-per-view on TV. My dad saw me because he was for some reason watching it on TV. Yeah, it's very. I think for me, it's just like as much as like, you know, I'm aware of the industry now, and it's like it shouldn't really be surreal because I'm, you know, work with these guys all the time. It still was always surreal to me because I looked up to all these guys, and it's just crazy to think that like I'm networking with these types of people now.
Oh, what a story, mate! I'm sure there's going to be so many more extreme experiences to come as well.
I'm hoping so. I'm hoping it's not.
I'm coming with you to the next, mate.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Last question, mate. If you could go back to young Suhit who's going through chemotherapy and could tell him exactly this whole story, replay this exact story back to him, how do you think he would react knowing that this is the life that lies ahead?
Stunned. Wouldn't ever. I actually, I say that. I think at the start of chemo, probably if I told like me before when I was first starting cancer treatment and whatnot, I would have been stunned. Right, I would not have ever thought this was possible. I was capable of this. That I was going to do this. I think 6 months. So 6 months of the cancer, when the perspective of my mind shifted. I think I'd have been like, this is. I think if I told him, he's like, yeah, I knew this would happen, because that's when
I planned this for you, mate.
it's because that's when the perspective shifted. It was like where it was like I made it like it was like a non-negotiable for me to like do this and become successful. As I say, like, but there was that 6 month period. I think if I told myself right at the start when I first getting diagnosed, I would have never thought I would have been in this situation, because I'd be like, mate, you're about to get chemotherapy. Like, slow down. You know, this timeline that never would have happened. But after that perspective shift, it was like that Stuart definitely knew that this was coming, and this was, you know, this was going to happen. And like for me now, it's like it's almost like I just have to achieve what I set to achieve. I think it's not I don't allow myself not to. I'm not going to allow myself not to get to where I want to. And I think that was the same from that comes from that perspective that I had when I went 6 months into chemo.
Well, mate, thank you for coming on the podcast and unlocking that same motivation to the listeners. I'm sure they're feeling caffeinated and inspired, and they probably have adopted that mindset after listening to us for the last hour and a half. It's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Where can the people find you online?
I really appreciate you having me on the podcast. Firstly, I really love like sharing different parts of my story. If you want to find me online, best place is Instagram at Suhit Amin, but every social channel is at Suhit Amin. Luckily having an uncommon name, get my handle and everything. So at Suhit Amin on any channel. And I also, like, as I said in the podcast, like I really like my whole purpose is like inspiring action young people. So if there are any young people, or even just people who just feel inspired by this and you just want to reach out, ask more, like message me on Instagram, email me, LinkedIn, whatever. Like this is something I really like to like give back, that sort of help. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Epic, mate. We'll do this another 5 years when you have some more crazy stories to tell.
Appreciate it.